I'm Cece.
I'm Aggie.
We are the Daebak sisters living in America.
가자!
Yeah!
Hello! Welcome back to the second episode of Daebak Sisters. In this podcast, we talk about Korean culture and what it's like being two Koreans living in America. Today, we'll be talking about education, part 1.
Yes, last episode we said we will also talk about work culture too, but after preparing we found that it would actually be a lot longer. So here it is, education part 1. So I think the first thing we have to talk about to go into education is the age difference.
Yeah, I did get a lot of questions. Well, I asked first when somebody would ask me, how old are you? I say, do you want an American age or my actual age? It's because we have different aging systems per se. So in America, you age on your birthday, but all the Koreans age on January 1st. No matter what date you were born as one, and then the next year, January 1st, you'll be 2 years old.
Yeah, in America, you're born as 0, I believe, and you age on your birthday. It's a little bit different in Korea. On New Year's, we eat rice cake soup, and that kind of symbolizes that we're aging one more year. So everyone ages one more. So if it's the New Year, you basically say, oh, I'm this much older. You don't wait until your birthday to say, I'm this much old.
And we bring this up because of this aging difference. Everybody in the same year has the same age throughout the whole year.
In school.
In school, yes.
Except for there's something called 빠른, which is like, I still don't understand how that works.
I think they got rid of it. So what 빠른 means, it's early. If you're born before February 27th or 8th, depending on the year, you are considered the same age as those who were born the year before. So it's kind of different. I think it's because of our school system starting in March instead of September as here in America.
Oh, yeah. I think my sister also, she wasn't actually born on the birthday that we celebrate, but mom changed it because she wanted to...
Oh, no, you got it wrong. I was born on the birthday we celebrate, but she used my lunar calendar birthday for my legal ID.
Oh, I see. That's what happened.
Yeah, so she wanted me to go to school a year early with the older kids, but that didn't happen because we came here to America when we were in elementary and we went back, and because of the 6-month difference of when school starts, I couldn't get into my actual grade, which was 3rd grade.
Yeah, let me assure you, we are actual sisters. I just sometimes forget a lot of things.
And you don't care about me, that's why.
That's not true. Anyways, we did neglect to tell you that we moved to the US when we were older, yes, but also we lived in America when we were younger. When I was 5 and when my sister was 6. Was that our Korean age or the American age?
That was our Korean age.
So
Oh yes, Korean age.
So we would have been 4 and 5.
I think so.
All right.
But anyways.
See how confusing this is?
It is very confusing, but just keep in mind, if you guys want more elaborate description or explanation of how this birthday and age difference works, feel free to send us an email at daebaksisters.
daebaksistersinus@gmail.com. But anyways, we wanted to tell you about the age difference because we go to school at the same age at a certain time. We start school in March. I wanted to talk before we go into our elementary, middle school, and high school about kindergarten and preschool. So since we lived in the US, I went to many different play school, preschool, elementary school, I believe.
You were in kindergarten. So when we were living in Santa Barbara, Isla Vista, I was in kindergarten. You were in preschool.
Yeah.
That's where we met teacher Robert, Mr. Robert, who likes kimchi.
Yeah, that was a thing back then. My mom would make kimchi and then she would give it to the teachers. They would love it, but they would eat it like a salad instead of as a side dish, which we will talk about in our food episode in the future.
And then we moved to Woodlands, Hamilton Elementary School.
How do you remember this? This is insane.
I don't know. I have good memory. I'm smart. Ah ha 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 ha.
It's true. She's the smart one in the family. So yeah, as you can see, we moved around a lot. So we have some experience in preschool, elementary school, and kindergarten.
We don't have a concept of preschool. Let's just go play school, and pt.1 is kindergarten.
Kindergarten is only 1 year in America?
That's what I thought.
If you have any opinion about that, please let us know. We don't know too much about kindergarten. It's been a long time since then. But yeah, when I was in the US, school seemed like playtime. It was fun. We had math classes, but it was really fun. I remember it being playing with blocks and recess most times and going outside, hanging out with people, and basketballs and asphalt playgrounds that I went to.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But in Korea, it's more very tight, I guess. It's uptight. You don't have as much recess time or lunchtime as here. Most of the studies are actually focused on memorizing the timetables or memorizing facts, memorizing history, even when you're in second grade.
Even in kindergarten, actually. And Korea is a country of education. So many parents, especially the helicopter parents, would send their kids to English kindergarten. So that's a thing that even as a kid, they send them to these places so that they get used to the language. Because you learn it younger, you'll remember it longer, which is true. But also, if you think about it, the education system already is quite intense, even for younger children.
Yeah, it's not about creativity. It's not about learning how to learn. It's mostly all about memorization.
Yeah, that's how even kindergarten and elementary school works.
But anyways, before we go into details, we should give an overall system of how it works. So from elementary, all of us will be 7 years to 12 years. We'll have 6 years of elementary, 3 years of middle school, which is from ages 13 to 15. Mm-hmm. And high school, again, we'll have 3 years, which is 16 to 18.
Mm-hmm. So elementary school, middle school, and high school. And as I mentioned, because the country's about education, you start when you're in kindergarten, but I think it gets more serious during middle school. But let's talk about elementary school for a little bit. So elementary school, I don't remember too much of my own experience, but as a teacher in the US, I did teach middle to high, and I saw some elementary school, if anything. And it looked like they were just cute little kids having fun. They would go out, play recess. The teachers would play with them. It's basically a lot more fun than I remember how Korean elementary school being.
What? What do you mean? You don't remember?
I don't remember much of it.
How do you not remember? I only had 5 years of elementary. You had 6.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I remember it. I just remember it being... I was that odd kid out who used to just hang out with my friends, and my parents were worried about me because I wouldn't study at all, while everyone else did. That was the prime worry of every parent in Korea, so naturally my parents were like, maybe we should move to the education capital, Gangnam, so that she studies harder. That's what I remember about my elementary school.
Yeah, that is correct. My elementary school experience in Korea, the first year, you're not as pushed to be good at tests. Second year, you start memorizing a bunch of things. The one thing I memorized extensively was the timetable.
In elementary school, second grade?
Yeah, that's when we start taking tests based on memorization on timetable.
Oh, I thought we did more easier stuff. I guess I remember really wrong.
Nope.
But yeah, elementary school also, we have to talk about the teachers. You know how favoritism is very looked down on in America? But that was a thing. It's a lot better now, but back then, some teachers would take money from parents and they would treat some kids better than the other kids.
Yeah, they would let go of things like, say, running around in the classroom, breaking stuff. They would just let it go if the parents bribed them. It wasn't as bad as it was during our parents' era.
Yeah, it's a lot better. It was already a lot better at our age, but before then, it was even worse. Like, if you got in a fight with another kid, the kid's parent who bribed the teacher would get
more money.
Yeah, with more money, basically, would get a pass on it. even if the other kid was being an ass, if they didn't pay money, the teacher would side with the kid that paid money, which was really messed up back then.
It was
Really.
better, but it still happened. I'm pretty sure it's mostly gone as of now.
My
we didn't
teacher,
run into any.
No, my teacher, my third grade teacher actually did the same thing. She was really mean to some kids. And later my mom told me, yeah, she took bribe.
Yeah, well, I mean now, like right now in Korea, I think it might be better.
Oh yeah, if you get caught, you go to jail for it. It's a big deal.
Oh, I actually had a teacher in 5th grade or 6th grade. I think 6th grade who went to jail because he took briberies.
Oh my god. My teacher in 6th grade went to jail because he sexually harassed one of the moms.
Moms? I thought it was the kid.
No, the kid's mom. They met outside. Anyways, it was a long story.
The reason bribery existed was because the teachers would help the kids get better scores. And these scores started mattering from like 3rd grade. If you wanted to go to good, well, now it's free, but it's round robin for high schools. But if you wanted to get into a good middle school, a good high school leading to a good university, which we briefly mentioned last time, you had to have good scores. To do that, if your kid's not as smart, you had to have the test beforehand, or the teacher will help you rig, and that's how the bribery all started. Now it's gone, most of them.
Mostly it's gone, but it was a big thing. Especially, being an educational country, everyone is obsessed with scores. We'll talk more about it in middle school and high school, but really, every parent is insane about it. That's just the atmosphere. Everyone acts that way.
Elementary starts being competitive if you want to go into one of those special middle schools, which we have. They're called. I think they're gone now, but we have a science middle school and high school, or what's it called? Liberal arts science,
like specialized art schools. There's every specialized school. If you want to go to it, you have to have good scores, or you have to be really talented.
Yes, but all this competition for scores starts in elementary, and now we'll see what happens in middle school.
In middle school is when academy gets really serious. This is when, Korea, everyone, if you're not really poor or you're very, I don't know, a bully or some delinquent kid, everybody went to academy. Math academy.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean private tutoring.
Private tutoring or academies. Yeah, like
it's not called academies. Hagwon is institutions. Private institutions to learn either English, math, history, or all of the subjects that's covered in middle school.
Wait, it's not called academies?
It's not called academies.
Why not? That's what it means, though.
Well, it's different. We could do some language difference podcast that I've realized over the last 6 years or so.
Okay.
And it's called private institutions, or you'll go to private tutoring, and there was legit no middle school kid who did not go there.
Yeah, we started when we were in the 6th grade, which is 13 in Korean age, 12 in American age. So that's you're prepping starting before middle school.
And it was a thing. It's still a thing to learn a year ahead. So if you're a freshman in middle school, you would learn the things that you would learn in junior year.
Yeah, so basically, if you're not ahead, you're behind. That was how it was, because everyone learned. Nobody really studied at school because they didn't really learn, which, I mean, it's not true, but that's how everyone felt, because when you go to the institutions, they will make you study for hours and hours. This was a big deal. Everyone went to these math, science, English, literature, I think, was one of them, but not as common unless you go to that side. How would you divide 이과 and 문과 in English?
Liberal arts and science and engineering.
Yeah, so once you go to high school, that's when you divide to 2 different categories. So you can choose...
We could talk about that when we talk about high school. But middle school, because there is no difference, And you can't choose what subject you learn. All the students in Korea in middle school learn exact same 13
Oh, yeah.
subjects.
Everyone has to learn it. It's not like you get to choose a different
So-
subject, or you don't have a choice in it, really.
No, and because I'm used to science and engineering, what I noticed in the States, you get to choose what subject within math you could learn. Algebra, trigonometry, calculus, and so on. We don't have that option. We learn all of them.
Yeah, you'll
It's
have
just
to
called
learn
math.
all. It's math. It's math. You have to know them. If you don't know them, you're going to be in big trouble starting in second year of middle school, actually. So you have to be good.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. But so competition is getting heated even more to get better scores.
In middle school, yeah.
And then high school is when it turns to hell.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, honestly, personal experience, I was actually really good at math until the first year of middle school. And then the second year, I started slipping. That's when it started because everyone else was starting to be, yeah, really, I was like pretty good until the first year. I was like second in class and stuff. She doesn't believe me.
No, so the difference is you're studying in Gwacheon, which is like a province, a suburb.
No, I went to middle school in
And then I
Daebak.
remember this. So we went to Gangnam, which is the education core, and they're very competitive, super competitive.
Yeah,
So
that's the
kids-
capital. That's the capital of studying education. Everyone goes there to go to the best university. That's where you go.
Yes, and then we went to one of the more privileged middle school. My sister didn't do that bad. She wasn't top score in elementary, but she still was on the upper class level.
Yeah.
We went to Gangnam, and I remember this too. I was top in elementary, and then I slipped down to just like mid-upper when we moved to Gangnam.
Well, I
for
think she's
education.
being really modest because she was still on the top 50 out of all the class.
No, top 30, but
Oh my god, see? She was top 30. How many students were in the school?
What happened to you, Cece, is you are doing okay, and then the first test you took, you slipped bad, and then you started losing interest in studying overall.
No, I remember because I remember the teacher in middle school, and I got, so it's out of 100, I got 95 for math. And that was actually really good. And after that test, I started just slipping, and I was like, this sucks. I don't like this.
Because they were teaching harder stuff, not
Yeah.
the normal math. They were teaching harder applications, harder derivations.
Yeah, so
And
let's say if you're not from Seoul, you're studying your grade stuff. If you're from Seoul, you study a year ahead. If you're in Gangnam, you study at least a year and a half or 2 years ahead of you. You have to study more than anywhere.
For the test, you would have problems that you could solve very easily if you use, say, advanced calculus, but you give those questions to a middle school kid who has to derive everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty intense. I remember it being very intense.
That's middle school for you. And then if you want to go to those specialized high schools, whether it'll be art or science, we had a foreign language special school.
Oh yeah, there was a very popular foreign language high school as well.
And then there's a specialized school called Minsa High School.
Yeah. Isn't that the foreign language one? Minsago.
No. So they did teach in English, but
oh, they just taught in English.
I'm talking about Wego.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so there were a bunch of specialized high school. I want to talk about specifically arts and the way they do that side because it's a little bit different than the US and how long it took me to realize that if it's your dream, you can do it. But we can talk about that in a different episode.
You could summarize it. So for science high school, you specialize learning just science and math, so you would have this crazy advanced knowledge even that you learn in college 101s. You would have that during your high school education if you went to that specialized math and science. To get in there, you had to take a special test, which requires a middle school senior student to know subjects from, I guess, maybe sophomore at least, or junior of high school.
Yeah.
Same with the foreign language school. You would take a bunch of tests, which is kind of similar to TOEFL, come to think of it. But you had to take those tests, sorry.
You've been playing too many games, so you said quest instead of test.
And then you'll have to write a very long essay, which is almost similar to the essays you write here in the States when you apply for university as an undergrad.
Can you explain what TOEFL is for people who don't know what that is?
TOEFL is a test for foreign language proficiency. It's made by ESL, English as a second language. Their headquarters are actually in the US. And we have to take those tests as an international student if you want to come to the university or grad school in the US.
Or you can, so there's not just TOEFL, but there's TOEIC, TOEFL, and what's the other one made from Seoul University?
TEPS. TOEIC and TEPS are not counted valid here in the US.
Oh no, not in the US. But it's counted in Korea, so it helps you go to colleges or apply for jobs. We'll talk about that later as well. Mm-hmm. But to summarize about art specialized school, art and PE basically.
Yes.
I personally didn't like people who were prepping for it because there were people who were actually good at it, but also the delinquent evil kids who were bullies, they would prep it because the parents are like, yeah, you're not studying, so let's try to get you in here. And they would pay a lot of money to even like art institutions to go learn. Because the way they do the tests are almost similar to, it's not about creativity. It's about how fine your lines are, how correctly you draw the things the way they want you to. So it's very different from seeing your talent and going to the school.
Yeah, so here I had a few students that I tutored in the States who wanted to specialize in art later on. They would still study the other subjects, and they would prepare a portfolio which reflects their personality, their creativity. Mm-hmm. The students I tutored back in Korea, they would have just average scores because mm-hmm. that's all they needed. And it's very standardized. The art is standardized. The music is standardized. The dance is standardized. There's no creativity. There's a standard, what do you call that?
Like
standard
the basis of where you have to be. Like you can do your creativity stuff later. You have to have the base of it, basic.
No. I'm saying you do have to have the basics, but there's a standardized criteria for what a good art is, what a good dance is, or what a good music is.
Yeah, you go to school, art school, the first thing they teach you will be, lines, shadows, the same thing. You wouldn't do fun stuff, per se. You would learn how to hold a pencil and draw the same way as other people will.
And then those students who don't care about going to specialized schools would go to either a private high school, which again, you have to pay a great amount of money or pass a test.
Yeah.
Or a public high school. As of now, except for those specialized schools, everything's round robin now. Mm-hmm. So it's up to your luck depending on where you live. It's just totally address dependent. But no matter where you are, you still have the same competition, which is like ridiculous.
My sister and I went to the same high school because she went first, and then I said I want to go there.
Because my sister's there, she said.
And she was not very happy about it. But I went there anyways.
Why? Leave me alone.
She's like, do we have to know each other even at school? We spend so much time at home. But yeah, so right now it's a round robin. Back then, my parents' age, they had to test to go to the school. If you went to the wrong school, it always didn't work out. Some kids do go to school in the countryside on purpose just to get special treatment to go to college. That's a separate thing. But there's many different ways to go to college, and everything's about going to a good college in Korea. So all of this past elementary, middle school, and high school that we were talking about, everything relates to going to the best college ever.
But to do that, high school students start taking studying very seriously, and then they get super competitive. Amongst the girls, I've seen girls hide notes. They won't share the notes with you. They won't tell you if they heard something about the test because
Oh,
they
yeah.
want to have them for themselves.
People get really upset if you ask for their notes. You don't share notes in Korea. You have to take your
So,
own notes. Some people do, but rarely. Especially if you're higher up, there's a lot of movies about the first in school being murdered by the second in school because they want to be the first, because it's really a thing. There's a big competition going on about being the first and going to the right school. So high school, like my sister said, it gets really intense. At one point, when I was growing up, there was a time where the government said you're not allowed to study after 10 p.m. at these private institutions because it was getting a little too intense. And like some kids would try to call the police when they were at the institution because they don't want to study anymore.
so what happened in Korea is every high school student would go to school at like 8 a.m.
Mm.
The normal subjects, which is like 6 or 7 subjects a day, depending on what day it is, the class will end around 3:30. And what happens is either you go to a private institution right after that, starting at like 5 p.m., and then you'll just go over private institutions, private tutoring until midnight or like 2 a.m. even.
Oh yeah.
So there's a saying in Korea, high school students don't sleep more than 4 hours a day if you want to go to a good university, which was kind of true for
which
me.
is true for her. I wasn't true for me. I could not. I was, like I said, I was a black sheep. While everyone was sleeping at 2, 3 in the morning, I'm the black sheep, but even then, I sometimes was at school until 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., like at those institutions.
And none of those time were used to do extracurricular things like athletics or stuff like that, unless you are preparing to go to university as an art, athletic student, or music or whatsoever.
I mean, one of the things that I dreamed about was the high school in the US, how there was a lot of club activities. It's a lot more fun, it sounded like, because you can actually study things that you're interested in. But in Korea, they did have clubs, but it was like playtime. There was basically nothing you could learn from it. You would not go to it that much because you had to study. It wasn't
about developing your skills in extracurricular fields. It was just about giving students time to relax with all those 18-hour studying days.
Yeah, and if you try to do something more in your clubs, they would be like, do you have time for that? Are you sure you have time for that? So it wasn't really...
Are you number one?
Yeah.
Are you getting all A's? Are you getting 100%
Why are you not
on all your
focusing?
tests?
Yeah, that was just how it is. And another dream of mine was prom. Because it sounded wonderful and beautiful. I really wanted to go to prom.
Yeah,
I still want to.
Koreans don't have any of those.
No prom.
Kind of sad.
Yeah.
No prom, no parties.
No parties.
Nothing.
Only the delinquents get to party and they get to be bitches to everyone else. And that's all. But even then, they study too. Even the delinquents study. It's like, you are like totally an outcast if you don't study. There's no way you can survive in Korea. So everyone studied. That's how it was. In high school, the stress is so much that I actually had... There's a lot of people who basically kill themselves. It's a really heavy subject, so we'll talk about it when we get to the big test of the year. But I've actually had a few people that I knew that passed away. Not personally, but one time was a senior in my high school, and another time was the same grade as me, but my friend's class. And they always covered it up as a car accident. They never told you it was because... Yeah,
it's the fact that it's too stressful, and if the kid wants to live up to the expectations, have like 100% in all the subjects, but can't, the stress eats them, and then they take their lives away, which is very sad.
Yeah, we'll talk about the stress of that big test in the next episode, just because this is a very heavy and long story about it. But that's part of what makes high school, middle school, all of this hard and difficult and hard for you to breathe is how much it's focused on education. You don't really get to explore what you want to do. Some people do,
Some people do, but they're outcast. And we're not saying America's not an educational country. We're just saying we're just being obsessively competitive about memorization, no creativity. We just want high test scores. And to get high test scores, you don't have to be smart per se. You just need to have good memorization skills. But yeah, so we experienced that. And in the next episode, while we talk about well, basically it's an SAT for Koreans. We'll talk about the difference of SATs in Korea, the difference in universities, and their systems.
Let me just summarize one thing. So in Korea, there's a saying that the heavenly course of education is going to high school in America and going to college in Korea. We'll explain that more because it includes why college is awesome in Korea. Another thing about high school and all this education stuff I noticed personally is that when I talk to people, Korea people know a lot of things thinly in general.
Korea people.
Koreans know everything thinly.
What Cece's trying to summarize is because we learned the same 13 subjects throughout this educational period of 633, 12 years, we have knowledge of basics about every subject, but we don't have in-depth knowledge about any of them.
Yeah, we'll cover that next time. And if you have any questions, you want to send us love letters, thoughts, send us an email to daebaksistersinus@gmail.com. Daebak is spelled DAEBAK, sistersinus@gmail.com. Thank you, Aggie, for joining me for another episode. That was a really complicated story. We have so much more to say, but that's time for us.
I know. Well, if anyone has more questions that you want to be answered in detail, we'll answer it to you. Just send us an email. And thank you, Cece, for having me again.
No problem. See you next time. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.